What does it take to break a legend? For Napoleon Bonaparte, the greatest general of his age, it wasn't a complex plan. It was mud. It was a mistake. It was the stubbornness of the British soldier who refused to run. This is the story of the Battle of Waterloo, a 9-hour storm of fire, blood, and bravery that decided the fate of Europe. This is how, on a single Sunday in 1815, Napoleon's empire came crashing down. Just a year earlier, Napoleon was defeated and exiled. Europe thought it was over. But he escaped, returned to France, and an entire army flocked back to him. Now, he was back, and he was coming for the only forces left to stop him: the British Duke of Wellington and the Prussian General Blücher. Napoleon's plan was simple: attack fast, smash the Prussians first, then turn and destroy the British. He hit the Prussians at Ligny and beat them. He thought they were finished. He was wrong. It was his first and biggest mistake. He now turned to face Wellington, who was waiting for him on a ridge near a small Belgian village. The name of that village was Waterloo. The night before the battle, a torrential rain soaked the field. The two armies camped within sight of each other. On one side, French confidants, they had their emperor; on the other, British tension. Wellington's army was a mix of veterans and raw, untested recruits. His entire strategy was defense. He positioned his men on a reverse slope, hiding them from view. But he had one terrifying worry: the Prussians. Were they coming to help him, or were they running? His survival depended on it. As the rain fell, he knew tomorrow would be a race against time. Napoleon wanted to attack at dawn. But he looked out at the muddy field. His greatest weapon, his huge cannons, were useless in the slop. So he waited. For hours. That delay was a gift to Wellington. It gave the Prussians time to march. Finally, around 11:30 a.m., the battle began. Napoleon didn't go for the throat first. He attacked a fortified farm called Hougoumont on the British right. It was a trap to make Wellington waste his reserves. But the British guards defending it were told to hold it to the last man, and they did. The fighting was brutal, close quarters hell. The trap failed. Hougoumont held frustrated. Napoleon decided to bludgeon the British centre into dust. His grand battery of 80 cannons opened fire. The sound was deafening. Then came the infantry. A massive column of thousands of French soldiers marched uphill, drums beating, towards the hidden British lines. They got closer. Closer until they were almost on top of the ridge. Then the British stood up. Two thin red lines appeared from nowhere. The order rang out: fire! A point-blank volley ripped into the French column. The front ranks were obliterated. The British fired volley after volley into the packed mass of men. The French column broke and ran. The first great assault was over. The British line had held. Napoleon was getting nervous. Reports said the Prussians were coming. He had to break Wellington now. He saw the British infantry and made his second catastrophic mistake. He ordered his entire heavy cavalry forward. Thousands of armored knights on massive horses charged up the slope. It was one of the largest cavalry charges in history. The ground shook. This was the moment of truth. But Wellington was ready. He didn't have his men run. He had them form squares. The British infantry quickly moved into giant hollow squares, with bayonets pointing out like steel porcupines. A horse will not charge into a wall of sharp steel. The French cavalry crashed against these human fortresses. They swirled around the squares, slashing with sabres, but they could not break a single one. For over 2 hours, they charged and charged again. It was a magnificent, tragic, and useless waste. Napoleon had thrown his cavalry away. The battle became a bloody stalemate. The field was covered in thick smoke. Then Disaster for Wellington. The French captured a key farmhouse in the center of his line. Now, Napoleon could bring his guns right up close. The British line was stretched to its absolute breaking point. Men were exhausted, ammunition was low. It seemed like collapse was seconds away. Napoleon saw his chance. He played his last card. His Imperial Guard, his personal, elite veterans. They were the best of the best. They had never been beaten. Ever. This was it. The final, decisive attack. As evening fell, the Imperial Guard advanced, silent, disciplined, terrifying. They marched through the smoke and up the slope towards the battered British lines. They reached the crest of the ridge and saw nothing, just smoke. Then, from the smoke, a command was shouted. It was Wellington himself. "Now, Maitland. Now's your time." The British Guards stood up. They were so close they could see the surprise on the French veterans' faces. Fire, a point-blank volley, smashed into the face of the Guard. The front rank was wiped out. The Guard stopped. They were in shock. Then, another British brigade appeared on their flank and unleashed another murderous volley. It was too much. The unbeaten Guard broke. They began to retreat. A British officer yelled the legendary words, "The Guard is retreating." That cry spread like wildfire. For the French army, hearing the Guard was broken was unbelievable. It meant all was lost. Panic exploded. And at that exact moment, the Prussians finally broke through in force. The French army dissolved into a terrified mob, running for their lives. The battle was over. Napoleon's army was destroyed. The field was a scene of utter horror. 50,000 men were killed or wounded in just 9 hours. Napoleon was forced to flee, later to be exiled for good. Wellington and Blücher met as victors. Wellington later called it the nearest run thing you ever saw. It was a victory built on British discipline, Prussian determination, and Napoleon's crucial errors. The world changed that day. The Napoleonic Wars ended. Europe's map was redrawn. Britain's victory launched it into a century of global dominance. But more than that, Waterloo became a legend. A story that reminds us that history turns on small moments. On mud, on a delayed attack, on the raw courage of ordinary men who decided, simply, to stand their ground. It was the battle that broke an emperor. And it was all decided in an afternoon.